Welcome back to the couch, everybody. Welcome back to another NBA episode. Max and I are back after a short hiatus. Max came down with a bit of a flu. We took some time off for Christmas. Max, are you back to full health? Are you still sick? What's going on? Is this a nasally podcast?
I think it's always a nasally podcast for me. I think I'm a nasally guy. I'd say I'm about 95% of the way back. I have that thing where you wake up in the morning and you feel awful, but after a glass of water and just getting up, you feel better. So I'd say about 95%.
Little Irish coffee wakes you right up.
Nope, not that. No, no, no.
My family came down with it as well. I'm probably next. I don't know how I've avoided it. Maybe it's because I stay in my room all day and just make TikToks and don't see anybody. But I'm also sorry for the unmade bed behind me. I know it doesn't look great for the YouTube, but anyways, we have a fun episode today. We're gonna do NBA true or false. Max and I decided on 6 different statements that we are going to decide if they are true or false. Max, you ready?
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, we're starting with this one. The first statement: Victor Wembanyama will win a championship in the next 5 seasons. Just for some context, 2029 to 2030 will be the last season in that span. Wemby will be 26 years old by the end of that span. Max, is this true or false?
So I did some research into this, and I have a list for you if you're ready. So Kevin Durant, LeBron, Jaylen Brown, Shaq, Michael Jordan, and Jokic were all 27 when they won their first championship. Steph, Tatum, and Giannis were all 26. Clay was 25. Tim Duncan was 23. And Kobe Bryant was 21 years old when he won his first one. Absolutely ridiculous. So I think from doing this, 26 years old seems to be when you're at least making conference finals, if not winning it all. And I think with Victor and what we're projecting him to be, I think he will win a championship in the next 5 seasons. Now, the caveat to that is there are still going to be some really good teams. If you're looking at the Thunder, you're projecting out maybe Minnesota, you're projecting out maybe Houston, Orlando, teams that are younger and that are going to be coming into their primes around this time. It's not going to be a cakewalk for Wemby. This team does need to make some changes. It needs to be better managed. It needs to get older. It needs to get some minutes together. And Wemby needs to just play better because he's still young right now, and he needs to become that prime player that we think he can be. With that being said, though, I do expect him to win a championship within the next 5 years. I'm going to give myself a little bit of leeway here. If he's 27 and wins it, I think it should still count.
It doesn't. That's the point. It's 5 seasons. It's not including this season because we probably know they're not going to win the championship this year.
We know. It's not probably. We do know.
Okay, I mean they're feisty, they're competitive, but it's the 5 seasons following this one. I think that's fair. So no, if he wins it the 6th season, that means it's false.
Okay, but you're not going to like cut him for it. Like I guess in this exercise, it's false. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Okay, so you're going true. I am going false. One thing that stood out to me about the list that you just read off of all the guys and their ages was the guys who were younger, Steph, Tatum, Kobe, were drafted into excellent situations. Like Kobe, a young Kobe had Shaq. That's why he won it at 21 years old. Steph Curry, obviously drafted to the Warriors with Clay and Draymond, was able to build that core and grow together. Jason Tatum, drafted to a great organization, the Celtics.
Tim Duncan
with a co-star. Tim Duncan, same thing. The guys like that won it at an older age. LeBron, like, really was the only player on the team that he was drafted to, the only star player at least. So I think for Wemby, I look at the situation that he was drafted into. Not that the Spurs are a bad organization; they're a great organization. But the situation itself, it just doesn't seem like there's enough young talent around him that I see developing within the next 5 years. Now, they can, still develop guys like Steph Castle. Vassell can get better. They can still draft guys and develop them that way. They have enough draft capital that they can make swings and sign guys in free agency, make trades, things like that. But I just think 5 seasons it's not anything about Wemby, because I think Wemby is ready to lead a team on a deep run right now. Like, he is already, to me, a top 10, top 12 player on any given night. He could look like the best player in the entire league. But that said, there's no co-star to me and I don't know, even if he had a co-star, let's say they trade for De'Aaron Fox, they don't have the complementary role guys that I see developing quickly enough to win a championship within the next 5 seasons.
So I push back on that a tiny bit because I think I don't think those guys were drafted into the best situations. If you're looking at the roster of the Warriors, you have this roster from 2009 to 2010. That's the year that Steph was drafted. It's it's pretty rough. I mean, you've got Raja Bell, Biedrins, Steph, Monte Ellis, Stephen Jackson, Corey Maggette, Anthony Morrow, Anthony Randolph, Anthony Tolliver, Ronnie Turiaf, C.J. Washington, Reggie Williams. That team ended up going 32 and 50. Sorry, 26 and 56. So not very good. Um, and then the Celtics, they did finish 55 and 27 that year. So Tatum did get into a better system. That was his rookie year, I'm saying, but it was still pretty rough. I mean, you have Aaron Baines, Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, Kyrie, Morris, Semi, Terry. I'm sure we remember that, and Marcus Smart. I'm sure we remember that team. Those guys really elevated their teams, and there was a lot of change around them, especially as they started to hit their prime. You see in particular with that Celtics team, they have a real changing of the guard before they finally get the right pieces to win a championship. The Warriors had to make a bunch of changes to get that championship. And then what stood out to me with this list is the teams that the older guys are on is not their original team that they were drafted on. So you're looking at KD, LeBron, Shaq. Those guys are all on different teams from when they win their first title, compared to the teams that drafted them. But then you also have Michael Jordan and Jokic and Steph and Tatum and Giannis and Clay and Duncan and Kobe and Jaylen Brown. So it seems like it's about 50-50 where either you're on the team or you're not on the team. And I would argue that the guys that are still on the team that are winning at that age are kind of the second option, obviously excluding Michael Jordan and Jokic. But I think with Victor, they need to be better built than what they are now, as you alluded to. They just need to do better team building. I mean, we watched them last night against Minnesota. They're not winning close games at all, and they're still really young, so I'm not worried about it yet. But I feel like they're missing a piece for sure.
They're missing multiple pieces. They need a co-star, no doubt. There's been some rumors about De'Aaron Fox, but everybody's just super young. Like Jeremy Sohan could develop into a good role player. He's not ready to be like a winning championship piece right now. Same with Steph Castle. Maybe same goes for even a guy like Keldon Johnson. A guy like Devin Vassell is a very good player. I don't know exact like we haven't seen them in the playoffs. That's the other thing. They do need some playoff experience. Maybe they'll get some of that this year. The other thing that we didn't mention is just how good the league is, right? Like
Yeah.
OKC is going to be awesome for the next 5 years. The Celtics are still going to be there the next 5 years. The Cavs will probably still be there. Dallas will still be there. Like the league is so
Orlando.
so deep. Orlando. I mean, these young teams that are going to be really really good for the span that we're talking about the next 5 years. So to me, like Wemby, he is getting so much better so fast. Like literally the beginning of his rookie season to now, it's like watching a different player. And the beginning of even this season to where he's at now, it's like watching a different player with the shot selection, the physicality, the way he's been able to learn how to score in the post, learn how to score in ISO situations. Obviously, he's probably the best defender in the world already. So I expect him like to hit close to his peak by the end of this span. I just don't. I think it's so hard to build a championship team in that short of a time period. But I mean, we are, we're picking nits here because we are expecting Wemby to win at some point. Maybe just not the next 5 years for me.
Is it wrong that I want my 7'5" guy to stop shooting as many threes and get to the paint a little
See,
bit? I'm even mid range. Like Kevin Durant has shown, obviously, Wemby and KD, he's still like 6 inches taller than KD, which is crazy to think about. But there is something there where there's a example for Wemby to look at as someone who's a really tall and lanky player that can hit mid-range jumpers. And I think that's just an element of his game that I'd like to see him add. Because last night he was 4 for 12 from three, but he still had 33 points and he was still getting to the rim. And then we were texting about it, and like right after texting about it, he dunks on everybody when he's getting like triple teamed. I just think it gets a little frustrating with his shot selection. I know he's trying to figure out what his range is. I just wish he took a little bit less threes. That's all. I just want to put that out there.
look, the game specifically last night, I thought he took some bad threes, but I think overall, like this season for the Spurs is about Wemby It's about development. It's not about winning games right now. It's about getting him game reps. And at the beginning of the season, I was with you. Like he was catching the ball near the logo a lot of the times and operating off the dribble, taking super deep threes, taking super contested threes. I think that's shifted a little bit. I think he's now getting a lot more touches inside the arc, around the rim. And I think a lot of the threes that you're seeing, I wish I had pulled up the numbers, but it feels to me like he was taking a lot of pull-up threes off the dribble earlier in the
Mhm.
season. It feels a lot more like catch and shoots now, which I'm a lot cooler with than I am with him, dribbling up and taking an early shot clock three. To me, like he's taking these shots and they are completely uncontested. Even if they look like there's a guy near him, like he is so much taller than everybody else. Like I know it sounds obvious, but I've come to the realization that Wemby just sees a wide open shot a lot of the times when it doesn't
Yeah,
look like he's wide open. So I'm okay with the shots. Obviously, if they were in like a playoff setting, I think the shot selection would change. I really think that the coaching staff is probably putting an emphasis on getting him game reps because if there's a world where Wemby becomes a 40% three-point shooter, which I think there is, that's where they're trying to get him, and I'm cool with that. So even if it leads to ugly nights like last night.
definitely. And he gets a lot of those. He does a lot of those ghost screens at the top of the key and just kind of flares out to the literally just wherever on the floor. And the guy, there's a second of separation, and they just can't get to him in time because even if they're right in his face, he's just got that extra 4 inches that above everybody where he's just open air space. So you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And that honestly, that kind of changed the way what you said, where for Wemby, it's just an open shot. That kind of changes the way I think about it from now on because it's just a wide open three to him where I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, that's not an open shot, but for him, it's wide open.
A lot of the times it is. Some like I said, there's always going to be some bad shots, especially with a young player. But a lot of the times, I think he's just like, yeah, I'm open, I'm shooting.
Yeah.
I do like your point about the mid range game because man, when he hits some of those pull ups and
He,
he like elevates and it's even more wide open, it looks like I had the thought last night like he's going to be completely unguardable if he
yeah.
develops like a real pull up mid range game. That shot is uncontestable. It's so stupid.
And
Anyways,
that's something that holds in the playoffs. The mid range stays like that is something that stays as a liable option for players. That's why Kevin Durant and LeBron and those guys they always are just so good in the playoffs because one, they're very cerebral and everything, but two, they just have that mid range option that's always available to them because it's such an unguardable shot when you get your back to a player in the post and you're able to mess with them like that. And with his size, I just think it would be something that no couldn't be stopped ever.
yeah, 100%. I think he'll get there. He's gonna be so
Yeah, he's
scary.
gonna be so good.
Like when he really figures it out, oh my God, he's gonna be disgusting. All right, next one. The Dallas Mavericks will end the season as a top six seed despite Luka's injury. I'll give some context before you go as well. Right now, the Dallas Mavericks are 20 and 12. They're the fourth seed. They are 2 games ahead of the 7 seed Denver Nuggets. They're only a game and a half ahead of the Clippers and the Lakers, both at 18 and 13. 10 of their next 14 games, they go on a little bit of a gauntlet here.
Yeah,
Kings, Rockets, Cavs, Grizzlies, Lakers, Nuggets, Nuggets again, Thunder, T-Wolves, Thunder again, Celtics. So those aren't all in a row, but that's 10 of the next 14. Do you think Dallas can stay as a top six seed despite Luka's injury?
so I- I've like flip flopped a lot on this one because I think it's a hard one just because that is a gauntlet that they're about to go on. But if you look at the teams behind them, they've all got some flaws. Lakers, I know they just made that DFS move for D'Lo and Maxwell Lewis and everything. I don't that doesn't necessarily like I love DFS. Like he's shooting 44% from the 3-point line this year. He's going to be a plug and play 3-and-D guy. He's a big wing. Like they're going to love him there and he's going to be really useful. That doesn't move the needle for me with this Lakers team. I still think they're deeply flawed and yes, you're going to have some addition by subtraction by getting rid of D'Angelo Russell and bringing in a guy who's bigger and can defend better and take smarter shots and is just a better player. I still I don't think DFS necessarily moves the needle for me with the Lakers, so I'm not really worried about them. The Clippers still have their own flaws. I mean, it's insane what James Harden is doing, how efficient he is, and how he's just plays almost every game. Like you got to give him his props. But the Clippers again just seem like a mismatch, like an island of misfit toys, if you will. So I'm not really worried about the Clippers. And then the Nuggets and the Timberwolves are the two teams that I could see, maybe potentially leapfrogging the Mavericks, especially if they go on a little bit of a losing streak here without Luca. But those teams have their own flaws. Minnesota is one of the most unhappy looking teams if you watch them night in and night out. They play, granted, they've gotten it together in the past, and in recent games, they've played a little bit better, but this team is still really clunky and is still a really strange fit. Everyone's trying to figure everything out, and I just don't really know if I can see Minnesota getting this figured all out with Julius Randle and going on a run and overtaking the Mavericks. Now, the Nuggets, they have their own problems. We've talked about their lack of bench depth. And if God forbid you lose Jokic, they're absolutely gone. So those are the teams where like I could see the Timberwolves and the Magic, or sorry, the Warriors potentially. Sorry, I could see the Timberwolves and the Nuggets potentially leapfrogging the Mavericks if they are to go on a little bit of a losing streak, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Mavericks can hold steady, maybe go up or down a few spots, but I think without Luka, they have the infrastructure in place to stay afloat.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing that you maybe didn't mention is Luca's timetable is about a month. The stretch that I laid out, that would be about a month. And if Luca comes back, I mean, even if they do fall to like the 7 or 8 seed and Luca comes back, you would think that maybe they could get it all together and move up again in the standings. I just want to talk about Dallas and this roster outside of Luca. So, what do they look like without Luka Doncic? Obviously, you have Kyrie now gonna have a lot bigger of a role offensively, right? He's gonna be a lot more involved. He's gonna be the guy. Unfortunately, Najee Marshall just got suspended for throwing a punch, so they're gonna be
Most
without
warranted
him.
punch I've seen in a while.
The what?
Nurkic. That's one of the most warranted punches I've seen in a while. Nurkic is such an unlikable player. I don't think anyone on any team likes him.
No, God no. Even his own team maybe. But
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Najee Marshall going to be out for the next 3 games, so that's kind of a big loss for the Mavericks because he does provide obviously a good point of attack defense, and that's another guy whose role on offense is going to be ratcheted up. They lost last night to the Blazers because PJ Washington and Najee Marshall were both suspended. PJ Washington now comes back, but now you go with Kyrie. You have PJ Washington. After the suspension, you get Najee Marshall back. You have Gafford. I mean, those are really good players. Like they're still a very, very solid team. So I think I think over the stretch they can remain at around a 500 level without Luca, maybe even just above 500. And then I think if Luca comes back, he'll carry them out and they'll still finish as a top 6 seed. So I don't think it's time to panic for Dallas. I do think this is definitely something to keep an eye on them in the standings because things do get very interesting if you end up in the play-in and you end up in a one and done scenario.
Absolutely. And the nature of the injury itself is a little scary. It's one of those injuries where it's just it's it's one of those weird ones that's what was it? It's like a calf muscle contusion
Yeah,
issue. He got an MRI on it. They're trying to figure out what's going on. It's it seems like it's just one of those problems. Like his calf has always kind of been an issue. Like they said, he strained it 3 times in recent years. He missed an entire preseason with the calf contusion. And then he's had heel issues before. This is one of those things where it's like he'll be reevaluated in a month. Is he
right.
necessarily going to play in a month? We don't know. It's already a guy that there's questions about his conditioning to begin with, and the idea of him staying off, like not being able to necessarily get on the court for a month or be able to run at full speed for a month. We already have some questions about conditioning. You put that on top of it. What is he going to look like when he comes back? These are all questions that you just kind of are going to have in the back of your head until you see him actually play and start to play well. And Luca was struggling a little bit this season by his standards. He's still having a great season for a normal person, but by Luca's standards, he wasn't shooting the ball that great, and he was pretty inefficient scoring the ball. So I think this is going to be a trying time for the Mavericks, especially with the suspensions, like you mentioned. But they still have Lively. They still have Quentin Grimes who can get buckets off the bench. They still and among the other guys that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
So
Grimes has
they
been
got
so good. I
yeah.
forgot to mention him. He's given them a real boost. I didn't even mention Clay either. I didn't mention Lively because he has this lingering like hip thing that's kept him out of
Mhm.
a couple of games. So that's another thing to just keep an eye on. All right, next true or false. Anthony Edwards will win a ring with Minnesota.
Ooh. Okay, I think this one's true. Now, right now, that's not the case, right? With this team as is, I think we can pretty I wouldn't say comfortably, but we can say that it would be pretty shocking if they won it all, just going with how the season has looked so far for them. There's obviously been turnarounds before in NBA history where teams have looked rough for the first half of the season, figured it out, went on to have a deep playoff run and win the championship. Anthony Edwards is really, really good. Um, I think where we thought the step that we thought he would be taking this year maybe was a little bit overhyped, and he hasn't quite lived up to that. I think that's the case. Like I do think some people are expecting more of him, and he just hasn't quite lived up to that. I think he's playing really well. I know you do as well. For me, clearly the cat trade was a blunder, but it was kind of a necessary one because with the way that the apron rules are, Cat was about to get really expensive, and they were going to be locked into that core of Gobert, Cat, and Ant for the foreseeable future. The Cat trade, while you might have donated a season in this season to just because you brought in Randall, who clearly just isn't a fit with what you have going on right now. That being said, you lose Randall's gonna free up some cap space. He has a player option that he can opt into, but after that, you're off of him. You're gonna have a lot more cap space to work with, and you're gonna be able to build a little bit and build a better team around Ant. And Minnesota has shown that they're willing to take swings and they're willing to. They've had a pretty good drafting track record. I think that this team is smart enough that they can figure out how to build correctly around Ant with this upcoming money that they're about to come into, and I think that they can do something where they build around Ant and make him a team that's good enough to win because we do think that Ant can be the number one option on a championship winning team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is true as well. I like how you put the cat trade because I think if they could do it again, maybe they wouldn't do that deal. But at the time, it made sense. The cat contract didn't look good. They were looking at their roster after, the shortcomings in the playoffs of really the whole offense just completely collapsing in the Dallas series. And they looked at that and they said, look, I don't think we can win the championship with this team. I think we need to think about what we want to look like with Anthony Edwards 4 or 5 years from now rather than the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that was smart. And that's why they got Cat off the books. And now they don't have that massive contract. Obviously, Randall coming in makes them worse, as you said. But now they have a lot more flexibility. Like they're going to be able to make trades. They're going to be able to sign guys. They have money. I think this is a good front office. I think this is a good coach. I like Jaden McDaniels. You hope he continues to develop. Obviously, Anthony Edwards, the main guy. Naz Reid, you hope they can hold on to. Like they have pieces. It's not just Anthony Edwards. And another thing I want to say is I think it's smart to give a young guy, Anthony Edwards, who's 23 years old, years to develop. And rather than going all in right away. You know what I mean? Especially with that team last year with Cat that we saw have clear flaws, even though it was better than the version of the team this year. I looked this up. Of players with 15 or more minutes a game, Anthony Edwards is 316th in assist to turnover ratio. That is below guys like Isaiah Collier, who's a rookie, Kevin Porter Jr., who's just not a very smart basketball
He's one of
player.
the worst basketball players in the league. I'm not even joking.
I agree. Brandon Miller, a second-year player whose main problem is really his playmaking ability off the bounce, decision-making stuff. So this is like a real area of growth for Anthony Edwards. Like I think as he gets older, this is something that he's going to really have to focus on. We saw it with Jason Tatum taking a playmaking jump over the last year to 2 years. Anthony Edwards has the same thing. Like he is not a finished product, and I think as he gets better over the next 3 or 4 years, and as the roster starts to come together, and you give this front office, more flexibility, which they've done, I think Ant will get them there at some point. He's not there yet, like I said, but he will get there one day.
I just want to go over their cap situation just to clean some stuff up. So really, their only big player that's going to walk this year, unless so Naz Reid and Julius both have player options. They're both going to opt in, would be my guess, because Naz could opt into making 15 million. It might be smarter for him to opt out and test free agency because I do think he can make a lot more money. That being said, there are no teams with money that he would be willing to go to. Like it's like the Nets, the Jazz, the Wizards, I think, are the teams with really any payroll. I just don't see Naz Reid throwing away what he has in Minnesota to go to any of those teams to get a bag. I think if he is smart, which he's a very smart player, seems like a really smart guy. I'm assuming he's just going to opt into that $15 million player option this year. Julius Randle has a $30 million player option. Sorry, next year. And he's going to opt into that. $30 million, he's not going to get that in the open market. He's going to opt into that 100%. After that, the only guy that's not on contract that actually matters, it's like Joe Ingles, PJ Dozier, and some G League guys. Other than that, it's Nikhil Alexander Walker. His contract is up this year. I hope they re-sign him. I think they can absolutely do that. He is a really, really good player for them.
Great piece.
He might be a little expensive. He's at 4 million right now. He might be commanding a little bit more money because of his performance as of late. That being said, I think he's absolutely worth keeping. The following year, this is where it gets interesting. Julius is done. Obviously, you're going to let him run. Naz Reid is done. Conley is done. My guess is Conley retires. You don't really need to worry about re-signing him. And if he doesn't, who gives a shit? Like, I don't know if you're Minnesota, if you're necessarily going to have to go re-sign him because he's just really old. So if you're able to sign Nikhil Alexander Walker to your contract, everyone else is set for that next year. You have team options on Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon. And other than that, it's just a bunch of bench players that are on like little 2 year contracts, whatever. So the real thing is you're losing Julius Randle. You're going to have a bunch of cap space to work with. You could break that into two good signings. You could work on re-signing Nas that year, which I hope they would do. And if you re-sign Nikhil, you have your core in place. That Julius Randle money that opens up now is what you can use to re-sign a bunch of new guys, which I think is what they should do. Because Gobert, they have locked down to 2028. Ant, they have locked down to 2029. So the two guys, I mean, Gobert, let's face it, this was just a miss. He's one of the worst contracts in the league, but you're stuck with him. So if you can make what you have, like you can make do with what you have, you should be set because you got your core guy of Ant and Jaden and Gobert locked down for at least until 2028, 2029 season.
Yeah, and I do want to mention like this roster does have clear flaws. Julius Randle isn't the only guy
No.
who should be getting blame. Like Jaden McDaniels hasn't been able to shoot. You need him to develop, or you need to replace him. But I think they will. You know, like I said, it's a good front office. They have flexibility. They're going to be able to bring in shooting. I believe in their ability to surround Ant with good players. Chris Finch is a good coach. You hope they keep him around. So, and it's a bet on Anthony Edwards becoming a top 5, top 3 player in the league, and I think he will get there and win a championship eventually in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Next, true or false? De'Aaron Fox will be on a new team by this time next year.
I think that is true. I think De'Aaron's time in Sacramento is unfortunately coming to an end. This team, they just made the mistake of firing Mike Brown, and I say that's a mistake because Mike Brown is a good coach, and this team honestly, Sacramento seems like a cursed franchise, but realistically, they're just very poorly run. Like Vlade Divac is not a good GM or whatever he is, and the way that they fired Mike Brown had a lot of coaches around the league very upset. I don't think that was his fault. The way that they've been floundering in late game scenarios, you see him consistently come out in the post game interview, say what he told the team to do and what they were supposed to do, and describe how they failed it and messed it up, like i.e. fouling a 3-point shooter, stuff like that. This team just doesn't really make a lot of sense. I think they took a swing on DeMar, and that swing was obviously a miss because DeMar's just really old and he doesn't really fit with what they're doing. And unfortunately, I think if I'm De'Aaron Fox, I'm walking because De'Aaron Fox should be a big star in this league, and he is a big star in this league in terms of production, but name value, he just does not have it around the league. And I think it's because one, Sacramento is a small market team and they're just not really great at marketing right now. But two, he just hasn't really played in any meaningful games in the last couple of years. And that's not his fault because he plays really hard. He has a ton of production and he just, for whatever reason, this team just can never take that leap. They're never aggressive enough in the right way. Like I talked about this on the podcast a million times. Making a move for Pascal Siakam, seeing what Indiana had to trade to get him, you could have made that move easily with the assets that they have. They floundered. They did not make that move, and they ended up with DeMar, who just as much as we like DeMar in his prime, that's just not who he is anymore as a player. And clearly, there's just a ton of flaws. Keegan Murray, he had a great freshman season, but his last season, this season, I mean, he's not shooting the ball nearly as well as he was before. You're seeing like Harrison Barnes should not have been as big of a loss for this team as it has been. And I just don't know. I don't know where you go from here. This bench is really not holding up that well. And if I'm De'Aaron, I'm looking to get to Houston. I'm looking to get to San Antonio. I'm looking to get somewhere where I can be utilized in the best way and play meaningful winning basketball.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Fox will be out of there by this time next year, maybe before that. Maybe we see him get moved before this deadline. Who knows? Um, this is a roster construction in Sacramento, roster construction issue in Sacramento. They brought in DeMar, as you mentioned, who completely changed their identity. This team, 2 seasons ago, when they were the 3 seed, they shot some of the most threes in the league. They were a high-powered offense running up and down. DeMar has completely slowed down their pace of play. He's also made them one of the heaviest mid-range jump shooting teams in the league and one of the lowest three-point shooting teams in the league. Fox is also a guy who takes a lot of mid-range jumpers. So those guys individually, on their face value, they're both great players, and you don't mind them taking mid-range jump shots. But you put them together, and you put DeMar especially in this system, it just hasn't worked. It has not led to winning basketball. They're just losing like the math equation that we talk about on a lot of these nights because of their style. And so they just don't have enough defenders, and they've had years to figure that out, and they just haven't been able to. So I agree, it wasn't a Mike Brown problem. He wasn't perfect. There was a lot of complaining about him not playing Keon Ellis enough. Is that a reason for him to get fired? Absolutely not. I hope and pray that we see De'Aaron Fox get moved to San Antonio. I really hope that we can see Wemby have a true co-star. I think De'Aaron Fox in that role, as he's always been on Sacramento because of their lack of high-end talent. He's always been the guy. If he goes to San Antonio and plays with Wemby, he has complete freedom to be like the number 2 guy, to just score a bunch of baskets. There's not really a ton of pressure on him. Like if you need shots at the end of the game, De'Aaron can go do that. But Wemby is the guy. He's the face of that franchise. He is going to be one of the best players in the league. And I think it would just be a perfect fit. Getting Wemby a perimeter scorer, a guy who you can run pick and roll with, a guy who you can rely on in the clutch.
See, I want him on Houston. I want him in that like Fred Van Vliet,
I'm fine
Jalen
with him on
Green role.
Houston. I think for,
Both of
obviously
both of them are fun.
there's no Wemby in Houston, but Houston desperately needs perimeter scoring, and they need a guy. They just need anybody to be able to create a shot and go get a bucket at the end of games. So yeah, I'd love him in Houston too. I just think the idea of pairing him with Wemby, like that gives that team a real chance to do what we talked about earlier, win a championship in the next 5 years. I think it would be beautiful. All right, next one. The Cleveland Cavaliers are the toughest matchup for the Celtics in the league.
Let's take a quick break and I'll give you the answer on after that. Okay, coming back. My answer to do I think Cleveland is the biggest matchup or the toughest matchup for the Celtics in the league? I think I disagree. I think it's OKC still. OKC is just so well-rounded and I think matches up with the Celtics very, very well to the point where I'm genuinely the most afraid of them. Now, Cleveland is a very close second. I think what they have with their big depth compared to the Celtics, alongside of with the elite scoring of their wings, I think it's really difficult for the Celtics to match up with them, especially when KP is injured. We've seen the Celtics play really bad basketball this month, and a lot of that is because their big play and their bench play has been really poor. That being said, I just think OKC has one, they have the elite wings. Two, they have the really solid bigs. But I think defensively, they match up better with the Celtics in terms of those wings that they have that are so elite are also amazing defenders. And if you're looking at Cleveland, as great as Donovan Mitchell is, and he kills the Celtics every time he plays them, he plays out of his mind. And as great as Darius Garland is against other teams and stuff like that, they're defensively, those guys are still liabilities. This OKC team, they are defensively sound really at every position, and it's just going to be really hard for the Celtics to match up with them because the Celtics can go and just have a shootout with a team and just go back and forth, just trying to outscore teams like that. They can win games doing that. But if you're really locking them down defensively and forcing them to play their worst, which is when they're taking their time and playing really slow and taking bad shots, they fall apart pretty quick. And OKC can really make them do that with those defenders that they have on that team.
Yeah. So the Cavs and the Celtics this season, 1-1 against each other, both pretty close, intense games.
Hmm.
Cavs are number one in offensive rating in the league. Celtics are number three. Celtics are number seven, however, in defensive rating. Cavs are number nine. These are the number two and number three teams in net rating. OKC is number one. So you see, both these teams are just super close in all the advanced stats. Obviously, different styles, but both the clear cream of the crop of the East. I'm with you. I think OKC is a tougher matchup, but I think this is really close. Like I think Cleveland has
Yes.
really taken that leap. The fact that they have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen as rim protectors, like it does make up for a lot of what you talked about with Garland and Mitchell, who are guys that in the playoffs, maybe, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown could have success hunting in pick and rolls and things like that. But when you have Mobley coming over and help, and you have Mobley switching on the perimeter, you have Jarrett Allen coming over and help, like they can still really defend at a very high level. And then obviously Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell offensively should be able to carry that team really far. The problem I see with Cleveland is that we still don't know exactly how Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are going to perform offensively in the playoffs in terms of their fit. Kenny Atkinson has staggered their minutes a lot this year, which I think is smart. But if you have to stagger two of your four best players, I just think that's a slight flaw in the roster. Obviously because they are two non-shooters. I don't know if you want to call Mobley a non-shooter at this point, but two not reliable three-point shooters, I would say at the very least. The other thing is, as good as Donovan Mitchell is, the Celtics would have the best player on the court in a series against the Cavaliers. In a series against the Thunder, there's a very good argument between Tatum and Shea, but I think Shea would be the best player in that series. He is a guy who can just go get a bucket on anybody. Obviously we have Drew Holiday and Derek White on the Celtics, but Shea makes a lot of guys just look like minced meat, no matter who they are. He is, to me, the best perimeter isolation scorer in the entire league, and I don't see anybody really being able to stop him when he gets going. I also like what you said about the defense, right? Like on Cleveland, you do have a couple guys who you can attack. In terms of OKC, there's not a single guy you can point to on that roster and say, yeah, let's hunt him. Like, let's get him on a switch. Whoever it is who switches, you're going to have trouble with. The thing that I do think the Celtics might have some success with against OKC is a pretty significant size advantage. Tatum and Brown are just big wings, and the Thunder are obviously lacking at that position, other than Jalen Williams. So both these teams, the Thunder and the Cavaliers, are tough matchups for the Celtics. I think we're talking about the three best teams in the league here, but I still think OKC poses a little bit of a tougher challenge, just by a hair. I mean, I am deathly afraid of Cleveland. I hope that didn't come across any other way.
Me too. Me too. And I know they're going to kick our ass, like, because we said all this, and Donovan's
Yeah.
going to go nuts, and I am extremely afraid of Cleveland. And if you're saying, let's put it this way, if OKC was in the East and I had to pick one of them to face in the playoffs, I would pick Cleveland over OKC, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's by a really thin margin. I'd be shitting myself either way.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Nikola Jokic will retire with only one championship ring.
I think that's the case until he meets up with Luca in Dallas. Now, I used to think that Luca was going to come to Denver, but why the fuck would Luca go to this horribly managed team? These managers, these owners, I mean, and general managers should be investigated for malfeasance for what they've done to this team and how they're wasting the prime of one of the most exciting and best players of our generation in our lifetime. If you're looking at their cap spread here, it's just sickening. Nikola Jokic, good signing, dare I say.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
He's not
solid
overpaid?
signing. He's signed to 2027, 2028 season. He goes up about $4 million a year in cap every year. So it starts at 51, it'll end at 62. This is where it falls apart. You gambled on Jamal Murray, and that was just the wrong gamble. You think he's expensive now at 36 million? Brother, it gets worse. 46 million next year, 50 million the year after that, 53 million the year after that, and then 57 million for Jamal Murray in 2028, 2029 season. That is disgusting. Clearly, at the time, I think people still thought it was a little bit of an overpay. I just don't know how you sign a guy in his position with his injury history, how you sign someone like that to a contract that expensive. Nonetheless, you're trying to capitalize in the moment on a championship team. So I'll give him a slight pass on that. I just don't see how you get to a point where Jamal Murray is making $57 million in the 2029 season. I I think from sitting on my couch, I could have seen that that was a bad idea. Michael Porter Jr. is also insanely expensive. 35 million this year, 38 million next year, and then 40 million dollars a year for 2026. That is not good either. I think MPJ we've probably hit about the peak of what he could be. Um, I think it's going to be a relatively inefficient guy who has defensive lapses, but is a really strong shot maker, and is a really high upside role player. But I don't think he's going to be getting any better than that, really. This is where it also falls apart again. Aaron Gordon, 22 million this year, 22 million next year, player option next year, weirdly. But he's also got a guaranteed 31 million in 2027 and a guaranteed 34 million in 2028, and then another player option for 37 million in 2028 9. Yeah, I'm gonna say he's gonna opt into that 37 million dollars. After that, Zeke Nnaji is making the fifth most money on this team. He's making 8 million, and Dario Saric is making the sixth most money on this team. Um, you're gonna have to figure out how to draft really well, which I don't want to say that they have not done that because Nnaji and Brown and Strother and Watson are all good players and were good picks. But I think you could have made better picks at that spot that they were picking at. I just think you're going to have to build through the draft and you're going to have to sign really cheap role players that are amazing to fill this team out. And I just don't see how you do that with your cap situation. I don't know what they do to build around Nikola Jokic right now unless they can get a team to take on, some really bad contracts in Murray and Porter Jr. and Gordon. And you're going to have to take, 75 cents on the dollar to, get rid of those contracts. But you're going to have to be thinking about the long term in those trades. I think they're stuck here and I don't know where they go.
But do you actually think Jokic will win another ring?
I think no. I think. Oh, so I'm reading this Jokic book right now. I got it for Christmas, and he is just an extremely loyal guy. Like every time he
Yeah.
has to leave a club, he's like disheartened and he doesn't like moving. And I just don't know if he. I think if he moves on from the Nuggets, he's winning another ring. I'll put it that way. But if he stays with the Nuggets, I don't think he's winning another ring with the Nuggets. So if the
Okay,
question
so
is, does he win another ring with the Nuggets? I'm going to say false. Does he win another ring in his lifetime? I say true. Does that make
okay.
sense?
Yeah, it does. We are on pretty different pages when it comes to the Nuggets. I feel like this is one of the places we've been a little bit off, like this whole season. I agree the Jamal Murray contract, not good. The Aaron Gordon contract, I think, is completely fine. I think Aaron Gordon is one of the better role players in the league. I think that's what you pay one of the better role players in the league. He might, honestly, I think that's actually a pretty good deal for Gordon. MPJ might be a bit much, but again, like you look at the fit with those two guys around Jokic, even with Murray around Jokic, like they create one of the best like starting fives in the league. And yeah, a lot of that is because of Jokic, but a lot of that is because of those guys' individual skill sets, right? Aaron Gordon playing in the dunker spot, being able to catch all those lobs, and also being one of the best, athletes and defenders in the league. Michael Porter Jr.'s off-ball shot-making ability is massive for them. It fits perfectly around Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray being the guy who can run two-man game with Jokic, being, one of the most unstoppable plays
Okay,
in the
this is
entire
this is
league.
where I'm putting my foot down. Jamal Murray has not been good in about 2.5 seasons now. He has
He's
not
playing
been.
better. Like he that first of all, 2.5 seasons is not true. He hasn't been like as good as that playoff run when they won the championship. That's true. When he was completely out of his mind, fine. But last year he was good. This year he got off to a terrible start. He has been playing better. There's been multiple games this season where they have won the game because of Jamal's shot making, or they've lost games where Jamal's played well because the bench just couldn't, score enough, or the team really can't play defense. Like that's a big issue too, is they just don't have a ton of good defenders on this roster. In terms of the starting five, and I'm including Christian Brown now, I think it's great. And whether or not you're overpaying Jamal, I am fine with the starting five. They need to work on the bench. Maybe it's those guys developing. Maybe it's replacing those guys. Maybe it's upgrading at the Christian Brown spot, moving him to the bench, bringing him off the bench. Then you get better that way. I don't know exactly how they do this, but I think Jokic wins another one with Denver. I think he's that good, and I think this starting five is still a perfect fit and debatably the best five in the league. I really do believe that. Even with like I know Jamal is not playing at the high level that they need him to. He's getting better, and I think he will get to a level where he is where they need him to be.
The way they're going to fix their bench is completely hindered because of the contracts of those big guys that are making all that money. And I just don't see them aging into. I don't see Jamal Murray's 27 and he's had a tremendous amount of leg and knee issues. And I think if he was never injured, he would have been way better. But he's just been hindered by all these injuries. I don't think you can rely on him and Michael Porter Jr., who also was like very close to medically retiring before being drafted. If you're telling me that he's holding up for the next 3 seasons, I just don't know if I believe that. And Aaron Gordon, I think as you know, as I would say he has like a mid contract. Like it's not the best contract I've ever seen. It's not the worst contract I've ever seen. But I think the skill sets of Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon can be used on. You can find those skill sets in role players for much cheaper than what you're getting
I
out of those
disagree with
guys.
that. I think those guys
So
are
you're
really
talking
good.
about okay. Michael Porter Jr. is an elite shot maker. I think you can find elite shot making around the league.
Not
Aaron
like
Gordon
him,
is
dude. Not at 6'10".
he is
Like I
he is
really
a
don't think that's true.
I think you can get a cheaper one. Like it's not going to be the same, but I would much rather have a little bit smaller, who's not quite an elite shot maker at that position, and free up some money to fill out my bench, if that makes sense. Like I'm willing to sacrifice what Michael Porter Jr. gives me to fill out the other areas of this team because it's clearly you're not winning a ton of basketball games with the team that they have now. And they can
I
make
mean, look,
shots like
I like that's fair. And if they move on from Michael Porter Jr., which there's a chance that they do, and they make a trade, and maybe they go take a swing at Jimmy Butler. Maybe they go, I don't know what it
Zach
is.
Levine is what I've heard. I don't know if I like either
Right.
one of those moves for them.
Right, I don't either. But either way, if you trade MPJ, you're getting a good player back. Like that's still going to be a really good team. I think a lot of the struggles this year, and again, they're playing in a stacked West, and Jamal Murray started the season looking like he wasn't even a like competent bench player.
Yeah.
Now he's getting his legs back. He's starting to make more shots. He's going to continue to get better, in my opinion. I think you're going to see the Nuggets be real, like a real threat and contender as we get into April and May.
I yeah, I feel like I've seen this show before and I know how it ends. Like Jamal Murray starts getting his legs back and boom, he blows something out and is injured. And I know that's not necessarily fair, but that's what it's been the last couple of seasons. And I just don't know longevity wise, I don't know what like how they're gonna hold up. And I really think you can get a really good athletic guy who can finish lobs and defend at a high level and put him in the Aaron Gordon spot for much cheaper. And I think you
Hmm.
can fill out.
I can't get behind that. I love Gordon so much. Like I
I
think
love
what he
Gordon
does
too,
is
but I
so
think
like
Jokic makes him
unique and
better.
special. Yes,
See, I
Jokic
disagree.
absolutely makes him better, but there's not a ton of role players that are going to fit better with Jokic than Aaron
I
Gordon.
disagree. I think Jokic is one of the easiest superstars to play with.
I think
100%.
those guys are they're perfect. It's perfect for Gordon and it's perfect for Jokic. I mean
Maybe.
we disagree, but I don't
You
know.
don't think
Like
there's a lot of guys out there that are role players that you can fit in and completely get elevated by Nikola Jokic?
I do, but not to the level that Gordon's at. Like Gordon is a legit problem when he's on the court and healthy for the Nuggets. Like other teams, first of all, he's a matchup problem because of the size, because you have to dedicate so much to Jokic. And like his flaw is that he can't really shoot and can't create, but it's completely fine because he plays with Jokic and he can run the dunker spot and catch lobs and he cuts off him and like he can use his size. It's great in his athleticism. I think it's great.
That's just like a million guys have that problem. Like, oh, a guy who can play the dunker spot really well, who has athleticism and can defend. There's like a bunch of guys that could do that that aren't making, for $37 million in 2028 when they're in their
I
30s.
don't know. Okay. Wait, he's making 37? I thought that was MPJ.
No, Gordon is making 22, 22,
Yeah.
31, 34, 37.
Yeah,
It goes up.
37, that's a tough year, but the before that, like it's a good
Yeah,
contract.
the two 22s are fine. And I don't understand how he has a player option in the middle of his contract and then he still has guaranteed money the other 2 years, which is
Yeah.
confusing to me. But I think contract wise, they overpaid for these guys, and with the second apron limitations, I just think they're going to be stuck. Now, this could all be fixed. Like if the CBA goes and is like, "Hey, actually, you can take on $1 over a trade value for aggregate salary," like that fixes a lot of things. And with the way that the cap rises every year, maybe it's not a huge deal in the long run if Jamal Murray's making 57 in 2028. But I think Jamal Murray's contract is actually a legit terrible contract. $57 million
Yeah, see,
in
you're like
2028.
totally out on Jamal. Like you don't think he's ever
I'm not
gonna
totally out.
be
I'm
a
not totally out. I
contributing
think
player. He's good.
no,
He's
I
playing
think
well right
32
now.
I think 32-year-old Jamal Murray making $57 million is a scary thing.
It is for the future, but could they win the championship that year? Yeah, I think they could.
I don't know about that. 32-year-old Jamal Murray.
32 is young. It's younger than you're
It's younger
saying.
for a guy who hasn't had like devastating knee injuries every year.
How old's Drew Holiday?
He's hold on, let me look that up.
I think he's far older than 32.
Drew
Like
Holiday
Derek,
doesn't blow out his knee every single year. That's the
Drew
thing.
Holiday's 34 and he's still like a very important piece for a contending team. That's all I'm
Drew
saying.
Holiday is like our fourth or fifth option and has not blown out his knee every single year like Jamal Murray is. You're not understanding. This is your second option we're talking about. Jamal
Yeah.
Murray he's played 24 this year. He played 59 last year, 65 the year before, 48 the year before, 59 the year before, and then 75, 81, 82. So since his third season in the league, he's played more than 60 games one time.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's not good. It's not good.
It's about the
You think
idea
that's going to
that
get better? You think that's going to get better with age? And these aren't minor injuries. These are Achilles injuries. These are knee injuries. These are injuries that are devastating for your career. He's had almost career ending injuries like 3 times. I don't see how that gets better with more wear and tear as your second option on a team that's trying to contend and make long playoff runs. I don't see how that gets any better with age.
I don't think it does either, but I think that they put it all together one year with Nikola Jokic playing at this level. Like maybe Jamal has horrible years coming up, but maybe he puts one year together where he stays healthy and they go on another run. Like I honestly, this starting five is ridiculous when they're all playing and they just need a couple more pieces on the bench. Like they're right there. Even if Jamal just ramps it up a little bit this season, we could get to April and May and be like, the Nuggets are right there with OKC. Like I honestly believe that. And I know that you don't, which I'm like surprised by because Jokic is just that good and
Jokic is good enough where he can make any team a contender. So I'll give you that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll give you that. But I just think with the way the second apron is, you're going to have a lot of teams that are staying with their core for a lot longer because they can't get rid of these guys. And you're going to have a lot of guys that develop and play better together and learn how to play better together. And you're going to have a lot of teams that kind of get Denver's number here and are able to beat up on them. And I just think the Denver secret is out. And unless you fill in this bench with elite players, elite level role players that are really cheap and you draft really, really well, as good as this top 5 is, there are teams in the West that are way more deep. And I think you're just not going to see them actually make a championship run unless they make some moves.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I fucking love Jokic. He's my favorite player.
I know, and it's going to be interesting to see even how Jokic ages. Like it's
Jokic
not like
is going to age very well, I think.
I think so too, but I wouldn't say it's like he has 10 more years at this level. Like this is probably a 5, maybe.
Well, then he'd be LeBron. I mean, he'd literally be 38 or 39 in 10 years. So I mean, there's not a lot of LeBrons out there. And let's just say
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like this is probably like 5 or 6 more years of having Nikola Jokic at this level, or maybe just slightly below it, where you think you have the best player.
And you want to waste that with Jamal Murray, who's extremely injured, who's perennially injured as your second option.
They locked themselves into that 5 after they won the championship, and I would have done the same thing.
I think I would have been hesitant to give Porter Jr. that money, and I would have been hesitant to give Jamal Murray that money. I think I can comfortably say that.
All right, we disagree. We disagree on some of the Nuggets pieces. It is clear.
It's just with the history of the league tells me that a guard his size. Now he's not like the smallest guard. I think he's like 6'4", but he's not. Yeah, he's 6'4", but a guy that size who plays his type of really like he does a lot of jerky movements that are not great for your joints, things like that, which are good. Like that's what NBA players do. They stop on a dime. They do jerky movements. They try to fake people out, which is what you do as an NBA player. But that sort of movements on your knees just aren't. You don't really hold up. And this guy has a bad injury history. I could see it. I could see us getting to a point where it's really tough, and Jokic has to make a decision.
The other thing for me is I don't see Jokic being like, yeah, let me go ring chase with Dallas. Like I just
no. The only thing is,
so
like,
if that's the case, then you're saying he's only going to retire with that one ring, and I think he's too good of a player to have one championship. Like I really do.
That's why I'm fucking pissed off that the Nuggets built it this way.
I think it's literally impossible for a player that good to retire with one ring. I really think that. Like he is going to win another one, in my opinion.
Hopefully. I mean, yeah, hopefully you get Giannis meeting up with him or something. I don't know. They got to figure something out. The only reason I say the Dallas thing is that Luka, there's been rumors since they were little, since Jokic became good, that Luka and him have like are wanting to
wanted
play
to play
together or
together.
something.
Yeah.
And I think it would just be the end of the league. It would be awesome. I'd be so happy for it. But
Real
I think it
quick,
would be so good.
real quick before we wrap up, quick thoughts on the Lakers trade.
I think like it's a good now move, but I mean, it doesn't really do anything for me. I think it's addition by subtraction with getting rid of D'Angelo because, as we've talked about many times, it's him and Julius Randle are like my least favorite players in the league. And him going back to the Nets is fun, is honestly perfect if you're trying to lose because that's what he plays is losing basketball. I think when you I think when a lot of really smart organizations move on from you, maybe it's a sign that it's you. I think I like the Warriors litmus test.
The Lakers are
The
a smart organization.
No, but the Warriors and I would say the Warriors in Minnesota are pretty smart organizations, and I think the Warriors number one is like a litmus test for me. If they're like, hey, this guy can't play in our system, I usually find that to be an issue. If you're looking at Team USA did it with Ingram. They're like, yeah, I just don't know. Steve Kerr was like, I just don't know if Ingram fits, and he ended up going home early. We've seen sort of how that's changed or that's gone about. They've had issues with D'Lo. Obviously, they got rid of him. Wiseman, they got rid of. Like, there's guys that don't fit in that organization. They let go of them, and you can kind of see why. D'Lo just has never been one to take good shots. When he's hitting, like great, but he's a defensive liability. Even though he said he's trying harder, and clearly he was going to be the scapegoat of this team. I don't think he was the whole problem of the team, but he was the scapegoat now because that's what LeBron does. He goes to teams and he dismantles them and then blames everyone but himself.
Okay, so LeBron, things are going really bad for this team, right? Obviously, they start off, they're 10-4, they look good. Then they go on an absolutely awful run. Nobody's trying. The defense is horrendous. LeBron takes an 8-day hiatus. He's
Yeah,
like, he's
it's
gone. He
random.
disappears. Nobody knows why. There's no reason. JJ Redick gives like one word answers in the press conferences. Then he comes back. He looks rejuvenated. The whole team is playing awesome defense in terms of at least their effort. They get a huge win on Christmas Day. Austin Reeves game winner. LeBron and Steph showdown. Anthony Davis turns an ankle. Nothing new there. And
Turns
now
an
they
ankle
trade
existing. He literally was just existing on the court and turned an
his
ankle.
ankle
Just put
turned
that out there.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Uh, now
The
they
ghost
trade
of
for
Christmas
DFS.
past came and turned his ankle. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So now they trade for DFS during this streak where they look really good defensively. But they need that position. They need a guy who can be a true 3-and-D guy. Cam Reddish has been playing a lot of minutes for them in that small forward role. He's a good defender. He tries hard. I'm always going to root for him. He can't make a shot. He literally
No.
cannot make a shot. Dorian Finney-Smith is a massive upgrade over
Yeah.
Cam Reddish. And honestly, if Cam Reddish, comes in off the bench and gives you some good minutes defensively, like great. That's a much better role for Cam. Austin Reeves has been really good as of late, especially offensively, but everybody across the board giving a lot more effort on defense. I think this team, like, I don't know how hard it's going to be for them to sustain this effort, especially with LeBron, being as old as he is. But I do think when we get to playoff time, if they can be like a top 6 seed and not be in the play-in and not have like the hardest path, I can see them upsetting someone and winning a series. I could see them maybe going on a run and getting to the Western Conference Finals. I don't think they have nearly enough talent to go all the way and get over the top and win the finals or even get to the finals. But I'm back to like Western Conference ceiling for this team, honestly. And maybe it's jumping the gun a little bit
Okay.
because we haven't seen DFS yet. Like honestly, what is stopping them from getting to the Western Conference Finals? I
Father
think they're
time.
better than like in the playoffs. I'm picking them over Houston. They just have more talent offensively. They're gonna be able to win late game situations against Houston.
I see. I think Houston. I think Houston at the end of that series, the entire Lakers lineup is just injured at the end of it. Seriously, you think AD is twisting his ankles on imagination, and you think that he's gonna be able to survive Houston? Let's be serious here. What the fuck are we doing? Ime hates LeBron now. LeBron will probably play out of his fucking mind against that, but even if they scrape it, like they make it past Houston, I just don't see them longevity wise making a deep run. This
Yeah,
this
okay.
team gets pretty gamey pretty quick when you take out LeBron and AD.
Yeah, well, you can't take out LeBron and AD. What do you
Well,
mean?
that's what's going to happen when they're extremely injury prone and one of them's 40
They
years
were
old.
healthy last year in the playoffs. They gave the Nuggets a real run.
Yes, I'm saying LeBron, that's playoffs last year. Now you're going to add on an entire season plus Team USA plus a playoff run for LeBron, who's 40 years old. Do we really
Okay.
think that a guy who takes off a ton of defensive what LeBron's doing is amazing. Happy, I think it's his birthday or something. He just turned 40. So shout out LeBron. It is amazing what he is doing. And I don't want this to come off as me like bashing LeBron, but he takes a lot of defensive possessions off because he is so old. He has to use a bunch of his energy offensively. Do we really think that that is the recipe for an extended playoff run if
Okay.
your best player, who's Anthony Davis, is injured all of the fucking time and is injuring himself on nothing, and your second best player is 4 years old and is going to take the entire defensive stretch off to play good off to be able to play like pretty solid offense.
But that hasn't been happening. You see, like they are clearly putting an emphasis on defense. They're fine if LeBron and AD and whoever if they're missing more shots now and they're getting rid of D'Lo. Like they're going towards the defensive end of the floor, and it's just an effort thing. When this team plays with effort, they are good. So I mean, all the reasons you just gave were health related. Like, if this team is healthy, I think they can upset a team like Houston. If they played a team like Memphis, like I would pick Memphis because I really like Memphis, just as a whole. But I'm not gonna be shocked if like the Lakers beat that team again, like they did a couple years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocking because LeBron is just so smart and he is such a good player that his ability to drag a team to a win over a series is nothing is shocking at that point. But any sustained run, I step back, I push back on Western Conference being their ceiling. I
Okay,
really
that's fair.
think that's I
That's
think
fair.
that's
Let's
too
let's
far.
land on maybe they're a feisty upset first round
They're a
team.
feisty upset team, but they're also in the standings. They're fifth place. So like you just really want them to hold to stay put and at least go up above Dallas. But at the very least, they don't want to drop into the play in because it could get
Yeah.
like you said the play in. It gets that the play in. It's like oh boy, that's not good for them.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, fun pod. We will be back hopefully next week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely we'll be back on our regular scheduled programming. This will be up on YouTube. Check out our little famous TikToker here, Jordan's TikTok. Links to all those will be in the description. He is almost at 10,000 followers, so please help him hit that. That would be great. Then we can start making some money on this thing. Well, he'll start making money on this thing. But yeah, check out our YouTube. Sorry, we were on a little bit of a hiatus. Like I said, I had the flu. It knocked me out, but we'll be back to our regular scheduled weekly pod, and we'll be doing a lot of TikTok content. Jordan's got YouTube breakdowns, which you can also find at the link, which will be in the description. All that stuff. If you just hit that link, it's the best. It's got everything you might need for the Couch Podcast Network. Also, Happy New Year's, Happy Holidays, everyone. Thank you all for listening. For the last 2-3 years now, it's been
I know,
an
dude. We're
incredible
going on
journey.
3 years, right?
Yeah, we're hitting 3 years pretty soon. So absolutely incredible journey. Thank you guys for being a part of it and for just listening to us. I can't believe that we're still going, honestly. So here's to 100 more years of this. We're gonna keep it up
100
forever.
more
But
years.
100 more years. Yeah. As the new year ends, is there any? Do you have any NBA related New Year's resolutions? Like any resolutions that you've been making as you watch? I should have prepped you on this, but I figured
No,
it
I
out.
actually do. I like I am a waiter, so I a lot of times work nights and I come home and I eat and I shower and then by the time I do all that it's like I don't know, 9 and I've just been lazy. Like I haven't been locked in enough to the games. I have them on, but I'm like tired, I'm sleepy, I'm like checking my phone. My New Year's resolution is to really lock in to the games and like there's a lot of times where I watch a game and then I'm like I got to watch this again like the next morning. I'm done. I'm done with that. I'm locking in, okay? That's my New Year's resolution.
Damn, you stole mine. I'm a cook. Jordan and I do that. We're both in the kitchen industry, so I'm home at like midnight, and I fall asleep during every. It's usually around 3 minutes left of the third into the early fourth. I'm zonked the
Yes,
fuck out.
exactly. I
Um,
can't I can't make it through a fourth quarter.
I can't make it through a fourth quarter. So my New Year's resolution is to watch in the morning, and be better about posting the content that I say I'm going to post. And then, honestly, my problem is I make the content and everything's done, and then I just don't have the time to post it. So I'm going to be better about that. But yeah, we both have a lot more free time now, so we'll be better about everything. And things are starting to turn for us. I can feel it. So, and that's
Feel
all
it. This
because
is
of
our
you
year.
guys. It's our year. Yes. Goodbye, 2024. Hello, 2025. It's the year of the couch, and we couldn't have done it without you guys, the listeners. So thank you all for listening and supporting us. Please leave us 5-star review wherever it is that you listen to this podcast, and we'll be back next week in 2025. We love you all.